Okay, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Before We Collapse with me, Andy Walls, and David Gumbrell, who's there next to me on screen. And you can see him, and he might even wave if we're lucky. Thanks so much. There you are. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today, coming away from your school or your college or your setting. If you're still open, you know, if you're still running, if you're not, well, you know, early summer break, and very welcome it is too. So it's great to see you all today. Obviously, your well-being at this time is just so important to all of us as human beings and as leaders. It's our #1 priority here at NHT, and it's the key theme of our President Tim Bowen's reign at NHT. And how couldn't it be, really? So we want to do something sort of as an end-of-term thing to celebrate actually getting there and to celebrate your magnificent response to what's been an absolutely awful year. So I'm really pleased to be able to bring you Before We Collapse with David Gumbrell. And you may think, why Before We Collapse? And we were sitting there thinking, what are we going to call it? And I thought, well, let's have something to give teachers before we all collapse in an absolute heap. And I said to David, can you do something around that? He said, yes. And I don't think we then gave any more thought to the title, then it became the Before We Collapse webinar. So here you are, the name stuck. David, as you probably know, is a pathway author and a acknowledged expert researcher, author and speaker on resilience and wellbeing. And you may have joined us for his earlier sessions he's been running for us on zooming out and zooming in, which has looked exactly at wellbeing and coping with the world. And he's also delivered a session called the Head's Control Tower, which you may have caught as well. He's a former teacher and head teacher. As you can see, he's passionate about his experience to empower and reassure the teaching profession. So anyway, that's key. I said I'd say some nice things about you, David, so there you go. Just quickly on housekeeping, we will be sharing these slides around with you, and here they come, so that's great. Please feel free to offer comments and chats. There will be some audience participation, but I think you can probably just use the chat box for that. Or you may be able to pop up. I'll let David decide on that. If you do, the name you've chosen to be known as today will appear and people can see that. And we'll have a little poll at the end. But anyway, that's enough about me. I can see the bouncy castle is getting ready, so I'm going to stop and hand over to David. So David, over to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome, colleagues. Well done for taking the time out to really consider yourself. And before we collapse, before summer arrives and we're allowed to collapse under the extraordinary year that we've had, I just think it's a valuable use of your time to stop and to consider how far you've come, what lessons that we can learn, and a really reflective hour, not a reflective hour on anything other than you, your progress, your development, your thinking, your well-being. And this for me is, as Andy was saying, absolutely vital to me. I really think that we're missing a trick if we're not looking after ourselves. I really think that if we're not looking after ourselves, that we can't possibly be the leader that we want to be. And that comes from experience in headship, experience in leadership, but also experience of reading research and reading what underpins well-being. And we hear a lot about well-being, don't we? And you've possibly gone on training previously on well-being. it's a thing, isn't it? It's a very modern thing that we're starting to talk about, and I think that's a good thing. But what does it mean for you? And for some of you, well, for all of us, it's going to be different. But what I want to do this morning is to just draw on some common themes, some themes and some ideas I think will be helpful and useful to you. I know how precious time is for you, and I want to make sure that this time is time well spent. And I've really considered what I think would be really useful to have for you at this point. So turn off your notifications, close your door, don't answer the phone, and just allow yourselves this moment to sit back, relax, and just consider where have you got to and how have you got to this point. They say, don't they, that a picture tells 1,000 words. And when Andy and I were talking about this webinar, and we started talking about, oh, you know, can you do something before the teachers collapse? Immediately, an image such as this jumped into my mind, and it wasn't difficult to select an image. I really like images. Images, I do believe, say 1,000 words. But also, I like metaphor, and I think that a metaphor can be quite useful to remind ourselves or contextualize some really complicated and complex thinking. But this image might also spark up, oh yes, what do I need to look after myself? There's something wrong with this bouncy castle. Something's not quite right, is it? It's not workable, it's not working. What is that? When we first look at this picture, it seems so obvious around a bouncy castle. What does that mean? Oh, a deflated bouncy castle. Oh, I kind of get where he's going with this. But why is it that we can look at a picture of a bouncy castle and say that's explainable? We know why it doesn't work. And that when we are collapsed, when we are the bouncy castle, when we are feeling deflated, it's slightly harder to explain how that has happened or why that has happened. And that's what I want to tease out today. Because a bouncy castle is only as good as, well, what's missing? How do we explain this bouncy castle not working currently? What's not being put into this bouncy castle? Well, the obvious answer is that it's missing the pump, isn't it? It's missing the pump that gives the air, that gives the bounce, which gives the whole thing a workable dynamic. It's that pump. That seems so obvious, doesn't it, when we're thinking about it as a bouncy castle? Oh, it's the pump. Yeah, we need the pump. We need to keep putting something in for it to still work. But what about if we're the bouncy castle? What about if we are the ones that need to put something into us in order for us to be the bouncy castle, for us to be the enthusiastic, engaging leader that I'm sure that you all want to be? What is it? What is that oxygen? What is that air? How do we get it? Now, what you might think is how you get it might be slightly different from how somebody else gets it. But nonetheless, when the air supply is restricted or reduced or switched off, the bouncy castle doesn't work. And if we don't top ourselves up, and topping up meaning, you know, other looking after ourselves in whatever way mechanism that is, then that may explain why we are feeling deflated, why we are feeling under pressure, why we are feeling that we've got no energy left to give, why we've now got a tally chart on the whiteboard clocking off the number of days left to go to the end of term. But these things, this inflation of you doesn't happen by magic. This inflation of you doesn't happen by accident. I genuinely believe that we have to make it happen. We have to plug it in. We have to switch it on. We have to put the air back into us. So if you think about it, recently, so you can define recently in however you want to define recently, but recently, what have you done that it has explicitly looked after you? What have you done that's really helped to inflate you? Yeah, give you that oxygen in your lungs, give you that air in your bouncy castle, put the bounce back into you. Come on to chat if you can think of anything that you've explicitly done. I won't name you. I'm not here to name and shame you. I'm here to celebrate the things that you're already doing and get an understanding of where you're at with this. But if anyone's brave enough to go on to chat and just type in something that they are doing or they have done that is helping them to feel inflated. Okay, brilliant. We've got the first one. 2, excellent. So we've got playing golf. Brilliant. So playing golf or even watching golf can have a massively positive effect on ourselves. It can make us feel better, oxygen in our lungs, walking along, thinking about our next shot, how we're going to play our next shot, the emotions of success and failure along the way. I can see why playing golf could be plugging yourself in to something very important. Regular exercise, thank you. That sounds like a good option. Exercise is important, and that doesn't have to be going to the gym. Exercise can be something quite simple, can't it? But we've got lots of lovely ideas here. Seeing family again. Yeah, we're going to talk about a little bit about that later. Seeing family again is really important. Making connections is important. That can inflate us. But if you consider your day, your normal day, are you able to give yourself connection time during the day? Do you make sure that you have human connection during your day? Do you proactively put that in to your day? Gardening and Pilates, both excellent. Fast driving and loud music, thank you. Camping, get back to connected to nature and the outdoors. I think that's a cracking idea. I think that's a really good option. Yoga, potentially that kind of physical well-being connected to a sense of mental well-being, and yoga is a regular feature of good ideas that people think, oh yeah, I could try that. But do we get to the point where we know yoga is a good idea and yet we don't do it? Somehow we give ourselves the excuse to not do it. So we know we need to do it, but do we do it? Oh, you'll be pleased to know the person who put cooking, you'll be pleased to know I'm going to come back to cooking in a moment. So that's a good one. Thank you for that. Either you've got the slides already or you've got a cracking idea there. I'm going with the latter. Working from home. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Have we learned that sometimes we can be trusted ourselves? Sometimes we can trust ourselves. We can give that entrustment to ourselves, or we can entrust that in others. And that can make us feel better, can't it? Because it can make us feel on top of the things that we're doing, on top of the jobs that are getting in the way. Nice idea. Swimming, excellent idea. Connecting with people, brilliant idea. Connecting with grandchildren, again, it's this connection that is just so important, isn't it? We've got exercise and Pilates. Absolutely, I get that. Comedy, Yeah, we all need a laugh, don't we? Life is serious, life is tough, life is hard. So to get the adrenaline moving, to get those positive chemicals flowing through our bodies is really important. And I know sometimes the comedians aren't funny, but when they are funny, it's really good to have a laugh, and a common laugh with other people. Lovely. Our puppy, yeah. Animals, they reconnect. There's like a love, isn't there? There's an unconditional love. And I think that we all need to feel that unconditional love from humans, from pets, from, well, pretty much wherever we can get it, folks, can't we? This is an amazing list. Reading a book a week, that's fabulous. That's a really good one. Reading I found was very difficult. I don't know about you, but I found reading very difficult when I'm stressed. Reading is very difficult when we're so in to work that we can't get rid of work, kind of park all of that, and allow our creative world to come into our heads. But actually, I don't know whether the person that's put that up on the chat agrees. But I think it's really good if we can find a way to just take out school take that out of our minds and put back in something positive, something energizing, some connection, some nature, some doing. And then, wonderful, thank you. That person's come back to me and saying, escapism, isn't it? Escapism. I believe that there is absolutely a wonderful sense of escapism. And when you get that book, and we've all got that, well, I hope you've all had that book that just takes you to the world, takes you to another world, takes you to that Narnia, where the realities of the real world are just temporarily parked. It just allows you to explore other things. And then doing a task that's worrying you, thank you. Yeah, sometimes we can, if we just get that job done, we feel a whole lot better as a result of that. Wow. So we've got a really clear sense collectively of what we could do to put that air into our systems. But why haven't we been able to put that in as a regular thing? Why? Because I think there's a difference between saying all of these lovely things and making sure that we put these wonderful things into our systems, into our routines, and encourage others to do the same, because we benefit from that. We benefit from looking after ourselves, but I believe that so does everybody else. So why don't we put them in? Well, there are many reasons that you can, I'm sure you can come up with. There's a global pandemic. Life is too busy. I've got too many other things to do. Mental health isn't for me. Mental health isn't a thing. I keep promising myself to do it, but I never get round to doing it. All of these are regular things that I hear really quite frequently. And my favorite one is I haven't got time to do it. So let's just address that one now. When people say to me, I haven't got time to do it, my response to that is, you haven't got time to not do it. Because the time that you will save doing it will save you more time than not doing it. And by that I mean that putting the time into looking after you, I believe, will make you more proactive, more productive, more empathetic, more connected. You will read situations better, you will read people better, And as a result of all of these things, we'll do our job better, quicker, faster, more efficient. And therefore we'll save ourselves time because we've got a new pet, we've read a book, we've been to a comedy gig, and we've done some Pilates, and we've gone swimming, and we've cooked. But we can't wait till summer holidays to do all of these things. At times we need to get that done prior to it. Brilliant. Thanks for the interaction, folks. As well, you know by now, interaction on Zoom makes them so much more effective in terms of connecting it to what you want me to talk about rather than what I'm guessing you want me to talk about. And you know this one, it's a kind of common phrase, isn't it? Put your oxygen mask on first, or put you first. And I still think that there's an excuse. I still think that we give ourselves that reason. We allow ourselves to not do it, thinking that we're too busy, thinking we're too important, thinking we're too powerful, thinking we've got too much to do. Whereas I want you to think about the idea that without it, you can't do it. And taking the theme of bouncing further forwards, I just want to challenge this common misconception that that resilience is about bounce back ability. To some degree, it is about bounce back ability. I have to acknowledge that. But this returns back to what I was saying about reactive and proactive. I believe that resilience is proactive, that you can put yourself into a good place first. Therefore, you're less likely to need to bounce back. Or if you do need to bounce back, you're not bouncing back from very far as a result of looking after yourself. So I believe that bounce back ability can be mitigated somewhat by looking after yourself so that you can bounce back quicker, because you've looked after yourself. You've done all the things that you know. But resilience is, if I'm going to say what it isn't, I need to say what it is. So this is a definition that I really like. I'm very appreciative of Oshio to offer it to us. So, they're saying resilience is about emotional regulation. But how often do we do that, folks? How often do we check in on ourselves? How often do we allow ourselves to emotionally regulate, genuinely emotionally regulate? They then go on to say that it's our ability to recognize. Okay, so we've got to recognize where things aren't quite right. Do we do that? How do we do that? What's our mechanism? What's our guiding post? What's our barometer to test us on that? I say us, but actually it's about you knowing you. But do you recognize it? Do you understand the signs and symptoms? And then importantly, and I think crucially, do we act on them? So it's taking it from passivity to activity, taking it from doing something about it to just letting it happen to you. And that, I think, is the crucial bit. And hopefully during the summer, you'll be able to action some of these things, get yourself into a good habit, and then be able to continue to do those things during term time, rather than a boom and bust of doing nothing during term time and then everything during the summer holidays. So emotional regulation, the ability to recognize, understand, and act on internal prompts and signals, suggesting that we all know about it. It's all there. It's all part of us. It's all what we do. Hopefully, that's a better and more useful definition than, oh, resilience is bounce back ability. It's just a something that sits over here. Whereas this definition makes it you front and center. It makes you able to deal with it and manage it. And I think that ownership of our own mental well-being is the crucial element that is missing when we're considering this most important of topics. But if you want to come onto the chat box and challenge that, I'm very happy to be challenged on that. But I hope that this is a useful way for you to consider it and for you to think about it. So you've got the bouncy castle idea, and you've got the pump coming into that bouncy castle. You've got some good ideas of what should go in, but are they going in? Yeah, are they going in? That's the question I want you to ask. Or how do you make them? How do you make it happen? Okay, how do you make it happen? That would be important too. And then Steve Peters comes up with another idea or another way of explaining a similar thing. And he's known for his chimp project, the chimp management mind model, which I can highly recommend for you if you're looking for a summer read. But he says this, just read it for yourself. So looking after yourself helps you, but also helps everyone else around you. What I want to challenge on that, other than, firstly, I want to celebrate the fact that it's talking about don't neglect yourself. Secondly, that it benefits you and other people around you if you do. But thirdly, I just want to challenge that final sentence. I want to get your opinion through the chat box, ideally. Do you think that we forget to do these things? Do we think we forget to look after ourselves? Or do we ignore the fact that we need to look after ourselves? So you can just type in ignore or forget if you don't want a quick way to interact in the chat box. But do you think we forget it? Or do you think we ignore it? Okay, so we've got a couple for ignore. We've got quite a few for ignore. Okay, interesting. So we've got most definitely, as leaders, we always want to put others first. Sometimes we do both, ignore. I think we're busy and then we forget. Okay, ignore. Wow. Both. Okay, yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be both, isn't there? There's going to be times when we forget it and there's going to be times when we ignore it, folks. Absolutely. How do we get to the point, as this person is saying, to permit ourselves to have me time? How do we get to that point where we allow ourselves, we prioritize ourselves over everybody else at times, not at all times, but at some times? How can we do that? Because we can't ignore it, can we? We cannot ignore it. Think of yourself now and compare that to your perceived self in 6 weeks' time. What's going to be the difference in you? And then that's some small guide as to what the job is doing to you, what the last year has done to you. That's significant, isn't it? But I'm not saying that that pressure is not going to be there. I'm not waving a magic wand here. But what I am saying, if you look after yourself more than you do, allow yourself to do the things that we've noted so accurately and articulately in the chat box, then we won't have so far to bounce back from, because we've dealt with it, we've managed it, we've mitigated it, we've got a strategic overview of it. And as that person says here, we've planned for it. Why do we plan for everything else? Timetable everything else, strategize for everything else, right? Medium plans and action plans and school plans for everything other than the MOT of ourselves. And still expect our efficiency and our effectiveness and our productivity and our positivity to just, well, carry on anyway. It's interesting when we stop and think about it, isn't it? How do we allow this to happen? Is it accidental? Are we ignoring it? And if we are ignoring it, how can we stop ignoring it? How are you going to recognize it, understand it, and act on it? I've learnt to read my body signals well for when things aren't going well for me. I know those signals, I recognize them, I understand what they're telling me, and importantly, I've learnt to act on it. In fact, I don't get the signs and symptoms very often because I'm proactively acting before I need to recognize it and understand it, which goes back to this idea of resilience being proactive. So let's try to plan for it. Let's try to put it in the diary. Let's try to prioritize it on the to-do list, which is too big. How are we going to do that? How are we going to push forwards? Well, let's plan. Let's have an idea. Let's put a strategy in place today in the next 20 minutes. And therefore, we've got a strategy, not a strategy of how to improve your school. Well, although it will have a positive effect on your school if you look after you. What can that look like? Back to school. When we come back to school, yeah, what are we going to say is what we've done? You know that question, you know it's coming. What did you do over the summer? Well, I want us to pre-think our answer to that question. Knowing it's coming, it's inevitable that that question is going to become, what have you done this summer? Or what did you do over the summer? That we're going to construct a really positive way of thinking about that now. We're going to plan it. We're going to put it in the diary, and we're going to make a pledge to ourselves that we're going to do this stuff so that we have a good story to tell, but we're genuinely looking after ourselves. So we're going to go back to the future. And again, as soon as I kind of thought about that, this jumped into my mind. And I've already spoken to one person today that's never seen this film. I don't know whether it's a gauge of how old I am or how old they are, but nonetheless, I assumed that many people had seen this film. And it's a good gauge of how old you are, because it used to be on, what these are called videos, for those of you who don't know, but they're going for a bargain at the moment. It's £2.50 for the whole series on video. But some of you are going, what's a video? And I understand that. But let's test out your Back to the Future knowledge before we get started on our plan. I'm finding that people quite like online quizzes. So let's do an online quiz now. So I'm going to offer you 3 questions, and then the glory at the moment is the first person to type in the answer into the chat box based on that answer. So they're all going to be about this film of Back to the Future, because we're trying to predict what we're going to say in September now. See what I'm saying? And we're going to base that on the past in the present in order to build to a positive future. See what I'm doing? I think you do. So there's going to be 3 questions. The first question is this. So come on to the come onto the chat box if you know what type of car is converted into a time machine. See, what it was actually doing was testing your age, folks. This just tests out the fact that lots of people are old enough to remember Back to the Future. Well done, folks. For all of you who said DeLorean, that was a car that had kind of funny opening doors, didn't it, in the middle, which seemed futuristic at the time, but maybe not quite so much this time. Oh, I'd learned something else. It was built in Belfast. Wow. The Titanic and the DeLorean. That is quite something, isn't it? Wow, that could be quite useful for when I teach Titanic again. I could link it to the DeLorean. Thank you for that information in the chat box. Okay, second question, folks. You've got the idea now. Which popular, in inverted commas, 1980s band wrote and performed the film songs Power of Love and Back in Time? Oh, straight on the button. So the glory goes to Kirsty. Wow, your primary school will be proud of you, Kirsty, that you know a dodgy 80s theme tune to a film. Brilliant. Oh, that was a popular one. Oh, crumbs, you still have the cassette. Now that's something. That's an artifact, I would argue. Especially if you're in a primary school, that could be an artifact. Wow. I'm almost want a picture of it, Kirsty, if you were able to. Okay, we get the idea now. You're starting to trust me now, aren't you? Which is always good. So let's go Back to the Future one more time, and I've cranked it up now. I've cranked it up now, folks. Okay, this is a tricky one. I didn't know the answer to it. Oh yes, no, I do. Sorry, I've just got myself confused. That's the answer to the previous question, David. The next question. Doc Brown, who is that the quintessential crazy scientist, dog, in 1985 is called Edison. But what is his dog in 1955? Wow. They've gone for the subtle. They've gone for the subtle names of old scientists. Multiple choice here, haven't they? What are we going for? Oh, we're not sure. We're not sure. We've got a range of ones here. Hopefully, Claire's going to get the glory of beating Kirsty to Edison, if that's right. But Jane's going to snuffle in and get Copernicus if it's Copernicus, and Sarah's going to have the glory if it's Archimedes. It's Copernicus. Well done, Jane. The glory, Jane. The glory. And so close, Jason, to getting the answer correctly. Well, there's a blast from the past, or maybe a blast from the future, or a blast from the present, because that's what we're looking at. You're with good folk now, Kirsty. We're all remembering this. The chat box is scrolling through to suggest that we all know what we're talking about when we're talking about Back to the Future. A little light side order there for you. I hope that was worthy of your time. But let's talk about the idea of present, past and future, and that this September could be any of them. It could be in the future. So this September at the moment is in the future. This September will become the present, and that's what we're going to be predicting. And soon this summer is going to become the past. What's it going to be known for? And do we have ability to influence the future? Well, I'm arguing that you do. I'm arguing that we can plan for this, we can strategize for this, we can do this, folks. So when we get asked the question, what did you do this summer? We can change that question round as to what are you going to do this summer? Make it happen. Don't wait for it to happen. Make it happen. Take control of it rather than thinking, oh, yeah, I've got ages. I've got five and a bit weeks. Oh, I'm going to do lots of things and then never do them or never get round to it, or things get busy and then you don't end up doing them. And I'm not suggesting that because we're on Freedom Day and COVID stops today, according to our government, and I don't want to get political. I was just making a statement. But there are COVID restrictions on what we can do. But sometimes, and I think what we've already noted is they don't have to be big things. They just have to be well chosen things. So even within the current restrictions, restriction doesn't mean we can't do it. It doesn't have to be the excuse that we give ourselves for not doing it. Even though we are restricted, what I want to urge you is to still take control of that future. So what could we do? Well, I looked up 40 free and fun things to do this summer, because I thought, you know what, let's get started. Maybe it's not my ideas. Let's take Adrienne's ideas. And it is genuinely a list of 40 things. And I've offered you 3 things there, folks. Of those 3 things, which one would you like to do? 35, 1, or 37? Come on to the chat box for me, just to give me a sense of which of those 3 things would you be willing to have a try of. Okay, a walking tour of a city sounds like a very positive option. We've got learning a new trick. Okay, all got 2. Oh, very good. We've got 37s. Oh, yeah. Well, let's have a think about it then, folks. What could it look like? Well, I haven't got time to show you this, but I thought, as it's a sunny day, folks, as it's a sunny day, there is a video link there where I'll cut it and paste it into the chat box, or maybe Andy, you could do that for me. But we could make origami sunglasses, and I know that origami can be poo-pooed as kind of oh that's just for kids, but I know a head teacher fairly local to me that made origami flowers for his own wedding, and made huge bouquets for the church, huge bouquet for his wife and all the bridesmaids from origami. It was quite an astounding feat. So origami can be at a whole different level, and it can be a skill that you can learn. And as soon as I saw this, I wanted to make myself some origami glasses. I didn't have the urge to go out in the origami glasses, but I did have the urge to give it a go. And then I'm a local historian as well. I'm fascinated by my local history, and I've learned loads, and it's really easy to learn loads. One of them is about the Victorian workhouse that's closely connected to you, and some of the characters and the people around that would be fascinating to learn. And I don't know where you are in the UK, assuming you are even in the UK, but finding your connection to Rome is a really good one to start you off with as well, if you want to go back that much further forwards. And I live, well, quite a few people live not too far away from one of the main motorways, in inverted commas, of ancient Rome, which is a really fascinating start point to learning your local history. Find out why your school is called your school. So there's a school close to me called Howard of Effingham, but the people at the Howard of Effingham didn't know who the Howard of Effingham was. but I found out that he was a leader in the Spanish Armada, and he was a significant Elizabethan, and from that, huge amounts of work were done by the school in order to learn more about their local history, which is a fascinating topic, and I urge you to give it a go. So the first three ideas, well, Sarah, stick to your number one and try to do it. Suzanne, stick to your number one and try to do it. Andrea, have a go at number 35, maybe not juggling, maybe not origami, but something that interests you. And Louise and Andy, have a go at learning your town's history. It's actually easier than you think, and before you know it, you'll get completely involved. There's usually a local history group close to you. Thanks, Andy, that's great that you've cut and pasted that in if you do fancy watching a YouTube origami video, but not yet. Let me finish and then you can go and do it. So 16, 17 or 18 folks, which of these grabs your attention? Which of these would you fancy doing? So Rebecca's going for a bake-off, and I'm going to come on to that in a minute. Rebecca, you'll be pleased to know. Any votes for 17? Oh, all three. All got another vote for 17, and we've got an 18. Brilliant. We've got them all covered. So a bake-off would be a nice idea. I was thinking of a bake-off could be that we are looking to use a foodstuff that we haven't used before. So I was thinking whether any of you know which of these is not a foodstuff. Which of these is not a foodstuff? Now, we're a family of cooks in our house, and we regularly have ready, steady cook. And again, that's showing my age, isn't it? A ready, steady cook. And we've got some of these ingredients as part of our ready, steady cookness, and they're challenging. They're challenging to use. So we've got some votes for, three of the four. So no one's fallen from a Cavolo Nero, but I will tell you about Cavolo Nero in a moment. This is a real spicy sauce. It's incredibly spicy, and incredibly spicy sauce. Even as a mayonnaise, it's got real power to it, but makes wonderful bang bang cauliflower, and that again is a real title of a real meal. So sriracha is a real thing. I didn't know about it, but it is a real thing. Cavolo Nero is a real thing. I didn't know about it, but it is a real thing, and I can now claim that I've cooked with it. So certainly that is a real thing, folks. I can billis was something I hadn't heard of before. So don't worry, Andrea and Michelle, who were saying that they thought that I can billis wasn't a real thing. These are dried anchovies, folks. So a real intense flavour kicking in here, a real intense flavour of anchovy, even if it isn't already a fairly intense flavour for some. And then carambola, if that's how you pronounce it, apologies if you know that, is a real thing as well. It's the number name for a star fruit. But imagine cooking with one of these things, folks. Imagine cooking with an ingredient that you didn't know anything about. How do you find the recipe for one of these things? Well, it's easy. You just Google it and hundreds of recipes come up for every ingredient you could possibly think of. Then you create a conversation, you create a dialogue, and you create a dialogue that's interesting and switches you into something that's different, new, and it connects you. It connects with your curiosity. It makes you think in a different way. It enlivens the cooking experience. So give it a try. Give it a try. Well done, Michelle. I'm going to give you the credit there because you were the one that went, aren't they all foodstuffs? Well done. I was deliberately leading you down the garden path, making you believe that there were some that weren't, but yet they were all. So there's a necessity, I would go as far to say, to connect with curiosity. You are all curious people. It's what makes us human. So I've tried to tap into your curiosity today. We need, as human beings, to connect with other people. And there's a lovely image of two people connecting there. That's genuine connection, isn't it? Genuinely connecting with people. They top us up, we top them up. We both feel energized and more bouncy, in inverted commas, as a result. Some of you noted that connecting with nature is an important way of making sure that our bouncy castle enables us to be bouncy. And I genuinely believe that to be true. And one thing that I love is being out in nature. And that's probably why Brighton Beach was busier than it's probably ever been before, because people are desperate to be out in nature and hearing the rush of the sea and the noises that makes as it comes in. We need to connect to nature, and we're cosseted from being connected because we're sitting in offices and we're looking at phones and we've got virtual worlds. But I don't know about you, but that picture makes me just crave to want to be outside. And creating with creativity might be something that you can put down as a pledge to yourself as to what you're going to do this summer, because we know the lovely things that this can bring: childlike freedom, self-expression, increased confidence, new ideas, personal growth. So can we predict the future? I know we've joked about Back to the Future, but that's a deliberate policy of mine to get you to consider this question, but turn it round. What are you going to do this summer? And turn that question into, what did you do this summer? When we get the what did you do this summer, we want to tell people because we've done interesting things. We want to tell people the benefits of what we've done, that it's made us excited and curious to be alive, to be us, to be human. And then if we can get ourselves into good habits, then we can push on into the new year, into that spring, into that autumn term. So when we go back to school, when we see these back to school messages, I just hope that this webinar is going to trigger this idea for you. Oh yeah, we're going back to school and I'm going to get asked that question of what have I done? And you think, hang on a minute, I can control the future now by telling myself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to cook with carambola, I'm going to cook with I Can Billis, I'm going to make some sunglasses out of origami, I'm going to learn a new skill, I'm going to learn some local history, I'm going to do something, so that this forever summer that we're about to embark on doesn't become the full of stuff that doesn't get some really important things done. So make a promise to yourself, folks. What are you going to do this summer to inflate yourself so that you're not the the bouncy castle with no air in it. I've given you some ideas. I'm sure you can think of many, many, many more. But make a pledge to yourself now. 3 things that you're going to do this summer that's really going to inflate you, make you feel good, make you feel ready to bounce back from the hell of a year that you've just been leading folk through. But don't forget the second important question, which is, how are you going to make this happen? How are you going to turn this into a thought, into an action? It's an action plan, folks, to talk headship phrases with you. It's an action plan. Make it happen. Because what I want you to do is I want you to be the inflated bouncy castle. And I want you to come back in September as the inflated bouncy castle. And before you collapse, you can make that pledge to yourself and make that happen. I told you I was going to be conscious of time, folks, and we're just approaching the end of this session. I hope that it's been useful for you. I hope it's a call to action for you. I hope it's been valuable use of your time to consider yourself in this whole process. And I wish you good luck in your summer. And there are some more sessions in the autumn term. And it'd be lovely to hear from some bouncy castles who have done some good work on looking after themselves. And here are other ways that you can reconnect with me if you want to over the summer and whenever you want to connect. And it would be a pleasure and a privilege to meet some of you in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, David, and thank you for putting a little bit of bounce back into our Monday morning. I saw on you you can buy a T-shirt with Mr. Bounce on it, and I'm thinking about sending you one later on because you are on Mr. Bounce. Thank you so much for encouraging us to get in touch with creativity and with nature. If I'm going to do 3 things, I think it's watch Back to the Future, Back to the Future 2, and Back to the Future 3. I've never seen any of them, so my £2.50 would be well spent on that. But thank you for that, Dave. As David said, he's back with us in the autumn on 3 sessions. 4 free sessions on 21st of September, 19th of October, 16th of November, and 7th of December. And if you can't remember that, it's a Tuesday. So one Tuesday each month in the autumn, David will be with us, and they'll be free. We're also offering other wellbeing sessions with Emma Kell and Adrian Bethune on the 8th of September and 18th of October. So do book onto those. Again, they're free. So lots of wellbeing support coming up for you. And a couple of other free things just to plug through Pathway. And it was on the slide at the start if you didn't see it. On Tuesday the 20th of July, we're doing efficient time management, which kind of fits in with all this, because if you can manage your time, you can pretty much give yourself a bit of space everywhere else. So efficient time management and organisational skills with Andrew Jeffrey, talking to Andrew Hammond. And on Tuesday, 24th of August, Advice for the Current Times. So Andrew Hammond, again, is doing a session with Guy Dudley, running through how we all get through the rest of next academic year. And of course, plenty more about our autumn conference or autumn term CPD and conference programme is out there on the website, so do have a look at that. But that's enough for me. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for taking time to be with us today. And thank you again to David for an hour's relaxation, 55 minutes relaxation and 5 minutes time back to yourself. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, David, and we'll see you all again in the autumn.
Absolutely. Bye, folks.